And hello, Jets fans, and a happy Friday to you. This is Rich Sports Talk, and we are previewing the matchup this weekend as the New York Jets take on the New Orleans Saints. So much to get into on both sides of the football for the Jets, and of course, how the injury bug is continuing to decimate this organization. But first, uh, just wanted to put this out there. If you are just joining us and haven't heard the news last night that broke last night, former Jet Demaryius Thomas unfortunately has passed away at the age of 33. Incredibly sad news. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Thomas family. I can't believe what they must be going through today. So even though Thomas only a short time with the Jets, you can tell the impact that he had with multiple Jets coming out just devastated last now. Demaryius Thomas, an incredible person, an incredibly devastating loss at the age of 33. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Thomas family. But switching to the New York Jets, this will be a very interesting matchup for the Jets because to me, this was a game that the Jets could win. But unfortunately for the Jets now, I believe that this is going to be a very difficult one. I thought that this was going to be a game where the Jets matched up actually pretty well with the New Orleans Saints. But unfortunately, the injury bug has not helped the New York Jets. On the Saints side, Alvin Kamara is a full go, and the Saints, who have been incredibly banged up for the last 5 weeks, are almost pretty much completely healthy. Meanwhile, the Jets have had injury concerns. And before I get into that, I do have an interesting topic that we're going to talk about later in the chat. So make sure you stay with us. But I've also put, if you look in the chat, a vote now that about Mekhi Becton. Is his injury a long-term concern, and are you concerned about him being the long-term answer left tackle? I will get into that more, but that poll is up in the chat for you guys right now. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button right here so you don't miss any of our latest New York Jets content. But speaking of the injury bug, it has not been kind to the New York Jets. Of course, earlier in the week, Corey Davis announced that he will be missing the remainder of the season. And as of yesterday, the injury bug has hit the New York Jets wide receiving core. Elijah Moore, day-to-day with the quad, did not practice yesterday, and it looks like today will be a huge day. Now, as of recording this, in my opinion, it looks like he is trending toward not playing, which would be a huge blow. He's been such a dynamic playmaker for the Jets. And my opinion is this. It is incredibly important to have Elijah Moore out there for Zach Wilson's development. But again, when you have 3 wins and at this point in the season, if you have a stud in Elijah Moore and he's going to be a great building block for this team. If you have to miss him for a week so he is completely healthy the remainder of this season, I'm okay with that. And I know the NFL is about playing through pain, playing through injury, but again, when you're looking at where this organization now, and right now it's about developing young players, you don't want this to be an injury that becomes nagging the rest of the year and hurts not only his development, but the development of Zach Wilson. So if they feel he can go and not make it any worse, that's great. But that is obviously a big concern. And talking about Zach a little bit, it was great to see him win the Rookie of the Week the second time this season, the only quarterback to win 2 and basically any Rookie of the Week awards this year. But looking at the Jets injury bug, this is not good for the Jets because if Wilson struggles this weekend, I know the process will be, oh, he's playing terrible, but I just want to see Wilson play conservatively. I just want to see Wilson be a game manager this week because, again, if Elijah Moore plays, that will be huge. But the Saints, they have a good defense. I mean, their offense has been the big issue this year. They have a good defense. But I just want to put this into perspective for Wilson going into this weekend. His third start now off of an injury, but now if Moore doesn't go, this is what he's missing. His number one and number 2 receiver, Ryan Griffin, a limited practice. He might be able to go. If he doesn't go, he's going to be missing his starting tight end, potentially his starting right guard as Laurent Duvernay-Tardif has been limited this week. He has not practiced at all. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to go. And, of course, Michael Carter's still out. So, basically, there's a chance that Zach Wilson goes into this weekend against a very good defense, was out his top 2 receivers, his number 1 running back, and his 2 not top offensive, but 2 starting offensive linemen, Mekhi Becton and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. So this will be a challenge for the rookie. It'll be interesting to see how he responds. But again, This will definitely be something that the Jets, to me, like I do believe they can beat Taysom Hill. I do think the Saints are in a bit of a free fall right now. That this is still a game that the Jets at home should be able to win. That this is a game that the Jets should be able to compete in, and that this is a game that the Jets should be able to make this close and make this a football game. But again, the New York Jets are going to have an uphill battle, especially with all the injuries that have hit the offensive side. And again, I mean, we talked about in the last episode that the defense really has been hampered by the injury bug, but now we're starting to see with the offense. And the good news for the Jets is they do have depth. Keelan Cole should be back this week. Denzel Mims is still on the roster and should get more playing time for Corey Davis. So again, it'll be interesting to see how the Jets line up if Moore doesn't play, what their stars would be. I'm assuming it's going to be Berrios, Crowder, and Cole with maybe a mix of Denzel Mims. So while not great, I mean, they still have some pieces at the wide receiver. But again, Elijah Moore has been such a dynamic playmaker, not only just catching the ball, but being used as a weapon, running the football. So that will be huge. So the injury bug will be something to keep an eye on, especially the injury report up until game time on Sunday. But again, this Jet defense has to come out and play a lot better. And this is a matchup, too, where the Saints offensive line's a bit banged up. They still have a good offensive line, and they're going to run the football. But if I'm the Jets, I'm putting 9, 10 guys in the box and just stacking it and basically daring Taysom Hill to throw the football down the field. And my opinion in this game is just completely stack the box. If Taysom Hill hits a couple big plays down the field in the passing game, you know what? All the power to him. Because watching that Cowboy game, that was just hard to watch. It was hard to watch him throwing the football. And again, he's a dynamic running quarterback. He wants to run the football. They have Alvin Kamara. They want to run the football. The biggest things for the Jets in this game is stack the box, make sure it's hard to run the football. And again, I just see that this team, especially with their running backs, is going to try to set up the screen game to Kamara because he's a great pass catcher. And with Taysom Hill, they have to hit the gimme throws because he really can't hit the throws down the field. So for the Jets defense, this will be a huge test again. I just want to see them stack the box. And it will be interesting to see if this defense comes out with what they've been doing and they play, they don't want to give up the big play down the field. I get that, but you're talking about a quarterback that can't throw the football. Like we talk about accuracy. I mean, he threw 4 interceptions last game against the Cowboys. I want to see the Jets stack the box and make him throw the football. If we have to play man on man on the outside, fine. I mean, we're talking about a Saints team that they have some good playmaking receivers, but they don't have Michael Thomas. They don't have a true number one. And look, if the Jets secondary gets burned, I'm okay with that if they're giving up the big play and Taysom Hill's beating them vertically with his arm because I'm not letting Taysom Hill run around. I'm not letting Alvin Kamara beat us. If Taysom Hill can hit those deep shots and hit those plays down the field, all the power to him because I have not seen that he can do that yet. So I want to see that from the Jets defense. And this offense, again, I want to see Zach Wilson continue to grow and continue to build off of last week. And the biggest reason I was excited to watch his development last week was his was really the first time he played within the offense. I mean, we've seen him play hero ball. We've seen him try to play outside the pocket, make the big plays down the field. But you saw last week he was playing within the structure of the offense, getting the ball out quick, playing within the system, hitting those check down passes. And you can see that there's still a couple of times that he's learning the touch, that he's overthrowing it a little bit, especially on the screen passes. But again, you're seeing him play within the offense. And you didn't really see him play hero ball until the game was pretty much out of hand. And look, they're playing a very good defense with a good pass rush, a good secondary. He's got to be smart with the football. And I don't need the sexy stats this week. If I see him throw for 200-something yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick again, I'm okay with that. I just want to see him look competent, run the offense, and especially if this team's going to be missing Elijah Moore, I just want to see him be able to string together some drives, put up some points. And look, you want to win this football game, but if this is a competitive game, Zach Wilson looks comfortable in this offense and looks like he is understanding the system, I'll be happy with that, especially with Elijah Moore missing because again, we're talking about a guy that's going to be potentially missing his number 1 and 2 receivers, his number 1 running back, and 2 starting offensive linemen in this game. And speaking of offensive linemen, guys, we have a poll going up in the live chat about Mekhi Becton. Is he a concern moving forward? Make sure you put that in there. And of course, if you have any questions, comments, put them in the live chat. Would love to hear what you guys have to say, what your thoughts are going into this game. As always, So make sure you throw that in the chat as well. So a lot to get into. I mean, we've talked about the Jets offense. We talked a little bit about the defense. And again, I want to see the Jets stack the box, really be able to go out there and just stop the run. And again, I think that they can do that. They have to. I don't want to see Taysom Hill beat them down the field. The big factor for this offense is Elijah Moore plays. But again, if it's going to help the Jets long term this season, and it's something that could be re-aggravated, and he can miss more time, just sit him in this lost season right now. But it's just one of those things where I just think that the Jets. Well, it's funny because I believe if the Jets are completely healthy, I do think that the Jets had a great shot in this game and a great opportunity. I still think the Jets have a shot. I mean, the Saints have lost 5 in a row. They've struggled. They've especially struggled on offense. But again, this is going to be a test of, can Zach Wilson continue to grow off of last week, especially if he's missing Elijah Moore, and can this defense make the adjustments? Because again, this is a quarterback where last week Gardner Minshew killed this team because he's a highly accurate and effective quarterback. You look last week, he basically was able to complete passes against the secondary. Taysom Hill's he's not an accurate passer. He's not Gardner Minshew. He's not going to dink and dunk his way and kill this Jets defense. I mean, they have to be aggressive. They have to be able to stack the box, prevent the run, and don't let Alvin Kamara take over this game. So, let's see. Zach, 2 Rookies of the Week award and gets nothing but Christmas with Lauren, generational 0 rookie. Yeah, and again, like people always like this is my favorite thing, and no one's talked about this and I'm glad Snoopy brought up the Trevor Lawrence debate. Like I always remember this made me absolutely sick last year going into the draft, which was just Trevor Lawrence would be screwed with the Jets. Trevor Lawrence would be killed with the Jets. Trevor Lawrence wouldn't reach his potential with the Jets. And then, of course, Jaguars get the first pick. You don't hear a peep. And then even this year, like everyone's talking about like how bad the Jets are, and I get it, and how bad their offense is, and I get it, and talking about how they've put Zach Wilson in a bad situation. I look at Trevor Lawrence, and again, did you know that Zach Wilson had more touchdowns in last weekend's game than Trevor Lawrence had in the last month? And oh, by the way, Trevor Lawrence has a coach, and people want to kill Robert Saleh and kill the Jets. And look, there's still a long way to go. But I'll tell you this coaching staff is not putting out bad headlines and bad PR where I look at Jacksonville. And I mean, we all know about the Urban Meyer story from earlier this year, but then this last week, they have James Robinson, who's the team's best find, really, and arguably, besides Trevor Lawrence, the team's most recognizable player, and James Robinson, who was an unbelievable find for them. Undrafted kid, finishes top 5 in the NFL in rushing this year. And I mean, that is a gift. Like when you're a team like the Jaguars and you're a team like the Jets and you're a rebuilding franchise, you are dying to get those diamonds in the rough. I mean, Bryce Huff is a good player and could be a good situational pass rusher. But if the Jets could have gotten a running back, or Joe Douglas could have found an undrafted running back that finishes top 5 rushing in the NFL, that would be ecstatic. And then, of course, you hear all this week, Trevor Lawrence even dropping hints in his press conference saying, I really would want James Robinson out there. I mean, they are just a complete mess. And everyone just was saying, oh, Trevor Lawrence would be so bad with the Jets and they wouldn't do anything. I mean, you have to give Joe Douglas credit. He's put pieces around Zach Wilson. Does he still have a long way to go? Absolutely. But you can't tell me that right now Trevor Lawrence is in a better situation than Zach Wilson. So, I mean, that drives me absolutely nuts when I keep hearing that where like, oh, like Zach Wilson's in a bad situation and the Jets aren't going to help him. And I'm like, are you looking at these other rookie quarterbacks? I mean, outside of guys named Mac Jones, is it helpful for Justin Fields that likely his entire coaching staff is going to be gone at the end of this year? Is that going to be helpful? Is it also helpful that this team that has a big cap hit doesn't have a first round pick? Because I know they traded for him last year. And then Trevor Lawrence. So again, that just really grinds my gears when I hear that situation. But again, guys, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We can talk draft. We can talk future. And one thing I did want to talk about a little bit too. As I have another mock draft, the third quarter one coming out next week, going to be the first 3 rounds of the Jets. Again, I do 7 round mock drafts in the offseason, but again, I do them after free agency because then I can get a clearer picture of where the Jets need to address the depth. And that's really what you look for rounds 4 through 7 is the depth on the roster. So I like to have a little bit more information before I do that, but I do feel it's privy that I can do the first 3 rounds at this point. And I did ask you in the chat what the Jets should do with the top picks. And with as bad as the defense is, some people said they should go defense and offensive line. Some people said that they should go defense and defense. But I was actually thinking about this a lot the other day. And one of the most popular players on Jets Twitter is Tyler Linderbaum. And I've had him in my mock drafts going to the Jets. And I've been excited. And I've been seeing like men like Damian Woody putting out there that the Jets shouldn't draft him because Connor McGovern's been doing a great job. And look, and I like that argument. McGovern's been very good, but my thought process behind that was you can move McGovern to right guard and then put Linderbaum at center. And I really love the kid. I do think that he's become popular, and I do think a lot of Jet fans look at it as almost finding their next Nick Mangold, who was a great center and a great piece for the franchise in the long term, especially going forward, and especially being a guy that really solidified the offensive line for a decade. But the more I've been thinking about it, and the more I've been going through the process, and the more I've been watching the tape, and then this gets back to Mekhi Becton. And I said this last week on the show, and this was actually very divisive in the chat. And I didn't know what, and I'm going to bring it up again. And I'd love to hear your guys' opinion in the chat. So make sure you put that in there, which is I brought up this hypothetical. I don't believe this is going to happen, but let's just say for sake that Kayvon Thibodeau or Aiden Hutchinson falls to the Jets, where they're likely going to be picking for, and that's where I'm projecting them picking. If Evan Neal, the left tackle, is there from Alabama, and the Jets have the choice between the two, who should they take? Now, Jets fans, and I understand why, the first reaction and the visceral reaction that I got from people was, oh, they're going to go get the pass rusher. They need the generational pass rusher. That isn't even a question. But then I put through this out there, which is about Mekhi Becton and how he's kind of now become an elephant in the room for this New York Jets team, which is I believe that if between the two, Joe Douglas would lean toward Evan Neal, and this is why. Because Mekhi Becton's injury history, I do think that the Jets are going to be looking for a tackle early. And their thought process behind this is the following. And again, a lot of this depends on free agency. If I don't think they're going to cut Fant. I know people have been saying, well, the Jets, Fant has a large cap number, but the Jets also have cap space. If anything, they'll rework the deal. I think Fant's not going anywhere. He's going to be the right tackle. And again, if the Jets can bring back Morgan Moses on a 1 year between $5 and $9 million deal, I do think they'll do that. But I was really thinking about this, which is going into next year, which is crucial for this organization, which is crucial for Zach Wilson, which is crucial for this coaching staff and this front office. Can they go into next season planning that Mekhi Becton is going to be the team's left tackle for 16, 17 games? And I really do not see that happening. Because again, if Evan Neal's there, and I don't think Neal's going to get there because to me, Jacksonville's going to finish with a worse record than the Jets, and they're going to take Neal because Trevor Lawrence is getting absolutely killed. But I do really love the kid Green from Texas A&M, the right tackle. He's looked really great. I love his film. He can play guard. He can play right tackle. He's flexible for this team. I do believe that the Jets are going to use one of their premium picks now on a tackle than a center because they almost have to, because they need an insurance plan over Mekhi Becton, because now Becton, of course, who's been on Twitter saying he's good to go. He's looking forward to getting back out there. But then you see this week at practice, I mean, he's basically just running conditioning, running sprints. And from what the coaching staff has been telling us, he's at least another week or two away and he needs full practice. But we're talking about maybe 5 games left in the season, 6 games. And this was an injury where at the beginning of the year, we thought he was done for the year. And then you heard the news like, oh, he should be out 4 to 8 weeks, with 8 being the long term. And then we got to week 9 and Becton's not ready. Now it's still not ready. And we're talking about a guy who's basically played less snaps than Sam Darnold in his rookie year. Now is going to miss the majority of this season. And after 2 years, I mean, he's going to play in 2 seasons less than 40% of his snaps. I mean, that is not good when we're talking about a franchise left tackle. And again, at the time of the draft, I really was torn because I really wanted the Jets to draft Tristan Wirfs. But again, Wirfs was a kid who projected better as a right guard and a right tackle. He's a great athlete, but you saw the footwork and you saw that he probably would struggle in pass protection. And again, the Jets were so desperate for a left tackle that I do think that Mekhi Becton fit the mold despite having the injury issues at Louisville. And Wirfs, and look, like people saying, oh, the Jets missed on Wirfs. But again, Wirfs also went to an ideal situation. He went to Tampa Bay where they basically could put him at right tackle on a great offensive line and basically play for Tom Brady. I mean, that also really helps a young tackle. But again, I've been saying this, like it's going to be hard because I love Linderbaum and I'd love to see him on the Jets. But again, I feel like the Jets are almost going to be forced to take a tackle in the draft if they don't bring back Moses, or Moses gets a better deal in free agency, because best case scenario, they have 2 great bookend tackles, or they move that draft prospect tackle inside to guard. But the worst case scenario is they need someone to be able to play left tackle. And let's say, for sake, Becton goes down next year, what do you do at left tackle? Do you move Fant back to left tackle? But then who's your right tackle? I've been saying you could play Elijah Vera Tucker, who to me is your best offensive lineman. He could play left tackle, but then that hurts your interior offensive line because you're kicking him out to left tackle. So the Becton injury, it's a big one. And it is concerning, where we're talking about a guy who the biggest concern you heard around him was the conditioning and the weight. And I know Jet fans really love Mekhi Becton, and he's great on Twitter, and I really love the kid. I do think he's got all the talent in the world. But again, you saw it in camp this summer, which was consistently his pass blocking was not good. And I've actually been on the record saying this, where I believe that the best thing for Becton is if they moved him to right tackle. Now, again, I don't think that will happen, because I don't think Becton will do that, because there's a lot more money to be made at left tackle than right tackle. But again, if you're a great lineman in the NFL, it doesn't matter to me where you play. It's because you're going to get paid. But I've been on the record saying I believe they should put him at right tackle because it might help with the durability because he's not going against the team's best pass rusher consistently. And B, he's a better run blocker, and that would help with the right side of the offensive line, the run blocking. Because like when you watch Becton's tape, you see a guy that is dominant in the run blocking game. And that's not a question. But the biggest thing for the Jets is they need him to be a great pass blocker too. And he struggled in that all throughout camp. And I get he was going against Carl Lawson, who was a great edge. But I mean, we've also seen this Jet defensive line. They're talented pass rushers, but they're not also the 85 Bears. And you saw reports of Becton giving up 3 sacks in the scrimmages at training camp. And you're going, okay, that's not ideal. And as a right tackle, you can get away with a guy that's not as good of a pass blocker, because also the quarterback can see on that right side of the offensive line and can adjust. When you're protecting the blind side, you need to be able to trust them. And I also said this after the first game, which a lot of people didn't like, but I think in the long term, we've actually seen it pay off. And I said, like, was it just me, or did the offensive line play better? The run blocking got better and the pass protection got better in the game when Becton got hurt. When they moved Fant to the left tackle spot and Moses came into right tackle, the Jets had their best offensive series of that game in the Carolina game. And I remember after the game saying, is this – I know it's not ideal to lose Becton, but in some ways, did they get a little bit better? Because Fant, I mean, I know a lot of Jet fans want to kill it, but that's been a great signing by Joe Douglas, because he's been playing great left tackle this year. He's solidified that position. And again, he's also a more athletic tackle. And in this offensive line scheme, especially under the Shanahan type of West Coast system, you want athletic offensive linemen and you want guys that are a bit quicker. And you've seen guys that like Elijah Vera Tucker, like Connor McGovern, like George Fant, that they're not necessarily the biggest bruising offensive linemen. They're not the typical road graders, but they fit in the system because of their athleticism. They can get to a spot, they can seal off a spot, they can get to where they need to be in the scheme. And that was one thing I was concerned about Becton was like he's an unbelievable athlete, but in terms of his footwork and his quickness and his lateral agility, was he going to struggle in the system? Now we haven't seen him play obviously long because of the injury, but I was on the record saying I think that they should move him to right tackle, and I've been on that band for a while. And again, I say this in the draft with that coming up, like don't be surprised the Jets invest in a high offensive lineman. But it's also frustrating too because we're talking about a potential piece that could go to another area to help this roster. But because there's such a big question out at left tackle, it almost feels like the Jets have to do it. And like I said, the good news is if you draft a great offensive lineman, like a great tackle, like I love Kevin Green, the lineman in this draft. I mean, I do think that this is a very good tackle draft. You can obviously kick him inside the guard to start off and eventually move to right tackle for Fant. I don't think they're going to move Fant inside, but I almost feel like they have to draft a tackle high instead of maybe getting a secondary piece, a great wide receiver in the first round, because the offensive line is the most important part of the team. That's what Joe Douglas believes in investing in the most. And when you look at their offensive line, like I said, best case scenario, you draft a kid and Becton stays healthy and you have an elite offensive line. But you also need to prepare for this eventuality, which is Becton's likely going to miss time next year. Because again, in the NFL, let me ask you guys, how many times have you seen a guy that's been injury prone early in his career all of a sudden be able to find it and not get hurt and be able to stay healthy later in his career? I mean, it rarely happens. And I really can't think of a great example of a player, and especially a defense or offensive lineman, because you look at their body types, they're huge athletes. They have a lot of weight on their joints. And when they start to break down, they break down quicker than receivers. They break down quicker than quarterbacks. I mean, they have a lot to deal with. And like I would love to hear what you guys think about Becton in the chat. Like, are you sharing my thought process, which is the Jets almost now are going to be forced to take an offensive lineman with one of their premium picks? And again, I put this up there where if Neal and one of the great pass rushers are there for the Jets, I know the public perception and most Jet fans, their first thought is go get the pass rusher. We need the pass rusher. But does Joe Douglas, who realizes that their biggest investment is Zach Wilson, their biggest key to success and the reason they're going to stay and keep their job for the next 10 years is if Zach Wilson becomes a franchise quarterback. And if it comes down to that, do they trust Mekhi Becton being out there, not even 17 games next year? Like if you had to put money on Mekhi Becton playing 14 games, so he misses 3 full games, as your left tackle next year, are you putting the money down on that? I would say most Jet fans would say, no, I'm not doing that. I don't believe in that. I don't think that that's a wise investment. But again, if it comes down to it, I do think the Jets are going to be aggressive in the draft. But does this now question with Mekhi Becton hurt this team a little bit? Because instead of going out there and getting another piece and another key position to fill holes or potentially trading down in the draft to get more players, does this hurt the Jets? Because now they're looking again for a left tackle. But again, I have also been on the mindset too that I wouldn't also hate the idea of moving Becton to right tackle and playing Fant at left tackle, because Fant's shown me he can be an effective left tackle in this league and in this system. And I know Becton won't want to hear that, but again, if you're selling Becton, like, look, right tackle, like it's still going to be wear and tear wherever you play on the offensive line. But could it potentially be a little bit less wear and tear on Becton if he's playing the right tackle spot where he's not going against a team's number one pass rusher, where he's able to really utilize his run game ability and just pound on people at the right tackle spot. To me, that would make a little bit more sense and you'd be able to get away with it a little bit more. And that makes more sense to me going long term. And again, I don't think he will do that because, again, even though great offensive linemen get paid where they are, Becton and his agent are probably going to say, like, look, he's a left tackle. He's going to prove that he's a left tackle because, again, left tackles, if they're great, they're going to get the bank. They're going to get the bag. And but unfortunately for Becton, he also has to be on the field in order to get said bag. So, I mean, I don't think Becton, I see your comment. I don't think that the Jets want him gone. I mean, they need him to work in some capacity, and you're not going to get anything in return for him. But like I said, it's almost been funny because everyone wants Linderbaum the center, and I was one of those people in that camp because my thought was move McGovern to right guard. But it feels like now that that's almost going to be off the board for the Jets because, look, McGovern's been a solid center. He's not an issue. The issue for the Jets' offensive line has been their right guard position, which they've somewhat addressed with the trade, and I do think they'll continue to address in the offseason. But the other thing, too, is really the left tackle position is can this Jet team now be able to go out there and find their answer at left tackle? Because I do think that's a major concern going forward. And if you are the Jets, you have to really look into this going in. And it hurts because this could be a premium position where the Jets could potentially get one of the best pass rushers. Like if Neal falls to the Jets and it's up between Thibodeau or Hutchinson, I do think the Jets might go Neal. And that hurts because you're missing out on a generational pass rusher. But again, if you're also the Jets, you need Zach Wilson to work. And Zach Wilson's not going to work if he's on the ground and he's not being protected. And to me, that's why Becton's kind of the big elephant in the room. And again, you've seen on Twitter that he wants to play. He feels he's ready to go. The Jets or staff doesn't feel he's ready to go. And I do think there's a rift there because don't forget about the reports early in training camp. And I always say this with organizations. You always get the coach speak, which is basically the organization always telling you everything's fine. They believe in guys. But I always say, read in between the lines of a team's actions because that will tell you how they really feel about certain players. Now, you see what they've done with Zach Wilson, how they talk about Zach Wilson, but they also, the way they act, you can tell that they do believe in this kid and that he does have a high ceiling. Mekhi Becton, this did not have a good year this year with this staff because what happened in training camp? The Jets signed Morgan Moses to basically be the backup tackle, but they paid him $5 million. Why is that important? Because don't forget what happened during camp and training camp in the preseason. The reports came out that Becton showed up to camp overweight or not the weight that the Jets wanted to be at. And that was a big concern. That was a concern last season. That was a concern this year. And part of it is I get it. They wanted him to slim down to A, help with the potential injuries, but B, because you need to be a little bit more agile in this system. And again, he shows up with the weight issue. Then he has the plantar fasciitis in the foot, which is another huge warning sign because when you talk about offensive linemen, what really can derail their careers, it's their feet and it's their knees. And why is that important? Because those are your shock absorbers. And if your shock absorbers aren't good, especially when you're a large human being, that's not going to be good long-term for you. So you had the plantar fasciitis. So the Jets went out and got Morgan Moses. And that told me when they made that signing, I remember saying it at the time, that they do not believe in Becton being healthy this year or that he's going to miss significant time where they had to go out and invest in a backup offensive lineman. And I was like a lot of Jet fans thinking, oh, they're going to move Moses into right guard or something. But when that first game happened and Moses was on the bench, it's just kind of like, okay. And look, Morgan Moses has been a solid right tackle. Has he been elite this year? No, but he's been a good right tackle. I mean, George Fant has been very good at left tackle for this year. I mean, you could maybe even make the case that he should be in Pro Bowl consideration. He won't be because he's on a bad team. But I just look at the situation going, this coaching staff, once again, I say this about the 2020 draft class, and everyone kills Douglas, and I get it. But once again, I go back to saying, to me, this is almost Joe Douglas's first year as the GM because he's finally with a coach, with a coaching staff that they're all on the same page and they're all going together. Where even with Gase in Douglas's first draft, there was still this overlying feeling that, okay, if Gase continues to be a disaster, this isn't going to last long. And he drafted very differently because the scheme was vastly different. So I said this with the 2020 draft class when Robert Saleh took over is no one's safe because they are vastly different players that are now going to be in a vastly different scheme. You've seen guys like Denzel Mims, like he doesn't fit the scheme, and you've seen what's happened to him. But again, he now has a great opportunity the rest of these 5 games to not only prove to the Jets that he can be a great wide receiver, because we've seen the drops from Mims. We saw last week with the 15-yard penalty. This is an opportunity for Mims, and it's a great opportunity. And like I said, in the NFL, your opportunity isn't just about impressing your team. It's about impressing the 31 other teams. Because if Mims goes out there and plays well, maybe he can turn into a draft pick for the Jets because the Jets feel like he doesn't fit this scheme. But if a team offers this organization a third-round pick, I mean, it might be hard to turn that down. But again, you look at Mims. Did he really fit the scene? Ashton Davis is slowly coming along. He looks like he can maybe play. But again, you got Jabari Zuniga, who was drafted to play an outside linebacker, and then they moved to the 4-3. Doesn't really fit this scheme. LaMichael Pirine fit exactly what Adam Gase wanted to do, but you look at the running backs that the Jets have now, where you want guys that can be great pass catchers, that can make plays in space. That's not LaMichael Pirine's game. So you look like a lot of these guys, they don't fit the scheme. They don't really fit. And now you look at Becton, and this was my concern too, was he going to fit this scheme? And in training camp, he was getting constantly be in practice. And again, it was like, okay, well, is he fully healthy? Is it just because he's learning a new scheme? And now when he's missed significant time, it's it's a big question mark that the Jets were hoping wasn't going to be a question mark. Like if I was to ask Jet fans about the question marks coming into the season, like during training camp, obviously Zach Wilson would be because he's a rookie receiver. I mean, really the one of the few positions I feel most Jet fans felt confident before the season was that they had their left tackle of the future. And it's funny because throughout this season, a lot of questions have been answered about guys and their role on this team going forward, but left tackles become a huge question. And it's funny because, like I said, George Fant has been great at left tackle for this team. And he looks like a better fit at left tackle for this team. So it will be interesting because also I think this coaching staff is kind of, their feeling is, and this organization's feeling, okay, Becton should have been back probably not week 9. They probably felt like maybe week 10 or 11 he should have been ready to go, and we're still sitting here and he's still not even practicing in pads. So again, like I don't think they're going to let it slip out. And that's another thing I think of this organization a lot of credit for too is, under Adam Gase, I mean, there was like leaks everywhere and you had every inside angle, but right now you don't really know about what's going on with Becton. I do think that I give this organization credit for not letting stuff like that slip out. But I mean, it's funny because Becton takes Twitter saying he's ready to go. He wants to play. But I do think that the Jets and the doctors are looking at the situation going, well, he's not ready to play yet. And that's concerning. And the questions remain. Is it the weight? Is it the knee? Is it something else? Is it a combination of things? I mean, there's just so many questions around Mekhi Becton right now. And unfortunately, it hurts this Jet team going forward. But again, guys, thank you as always for joining us. If you have your questions, put them in the chat. We'd love to answer them. Again, going into this weekend, potentially going to be really tough for this Jet offense with Elijah Moore. That's going to be the huge story, is if he plays. And again, I thought this was a game the Jets could win, and I still think they can, especially if they stack the box and can somehow limit the run, because Taysom Hill's not a good quarterback. But again, with all the injuries to the offense now starting to catch up against a good defense, it's going to be tough. You're going against a good quality head coach. And on top of that, I do think it's going to be tough for this Jet team where you look at this young quarterback going to be missing multiple pieces, especially on the offense at key positions. That's going to make it incredibly difficult. And again, I need to see this Jet defense. I want to see him stack the box and not let the running game kill them. If somehow Taysom Hill can beat him over the top, more power to you. I don't really see that happening. But again, I mean, we talk about the Saints losing 5 in a row. I do think this is a game the Jets will compete in, but again, I just feel like the Saints are finally getting healthy. Alvin Kamara will play this weekend. That's going to be a huge addition to the Saints team. So again, I just feel like this is going to be a close game. I don't see the Jets winning this one, and it's tough because this was one of the games I thought on the schedule. I still think they can beat Jacksonville. I do think there's maybe another couple games, and the Jets could sneak a win. Buffalo potentially Week 18, although they're basically falling off a cliff right now. Dolphins, I think they could potentially be, even though the Dolphins are playing better. But it'll be interesting. I would love to see the Jets get a win this weekend. But again, it's going to come down to can they slow down the running game, especially because that's what Taysom Hill's going to want to do. I'm expecting a lot of run pass option, RPO. But the one thing I will say about this defense, as bad as they've been this year, whenever they get toasted like this and then they get killed in the media, they tend to come back with a better performance, especially at home. So we'll see how that goes this week. But again, guys, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our Jets content. We always do a preview and, of course, a recap after every week. So we will be recapping the game on Monday morning at 10 a.m., breaking down the game, Zach Wilson's performance, talking about what needs to happen. And, of course, if Elijah Moore plays this week, we'll give our reaction on this upcoming Monday. But again, guys, if you have any questions, we can talk about the draft. We can talk about this roster. We can talk about, Mekhi Becton. I'd love to hear your feelings on Mekhi Becton. Do you agree with my take about maybe moving him to right tackle for long term? Are you concerned about him going forward? Do you think the Jets now are forced to take an offensive lineman with one of their 2 first-round picks because of Becton? Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions in the chat. And, of course, if you have questions about this team, about the roster, about Salah, about Wilson, would love to hear from you guys. Just looking to see in the chat if we got anything. Joe saying George Fant only played 2 games in college with Diana. He has huge upside. And again, he's a big athlete. That's why Joe Douglas invested heavily in him. And I know at the time a lot of Jet fans, including myself, are going, why are they putting this much money in George Fant, especially with Seattle? Because Seattle didn't really want him, and their offensive line is terrible and still is terrible. But it looks like Joe Douglas, and I mean, we've killed him before, and I will say this, like Greg Van Roten has been a terrible signing. Well, I will say this about Douglas, and I know Becton, the pick, doesn't look great right now, but he's done a better job than I think we want to give him credit for with this offensive line. George Fant's been a good pickup. Moses has been a good pickup. McGovern has been solid this year. I think he's playing better in a scheme that he fits better. And again, Tardif was playing great until he's hurt. He got hurt. Hopefully he can go this weekend. But again, I do think Douglas is doing a better job of building the offensive line than people want to give him credit for. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are things you can criticize Joe Douglas for, but in terms of how he's building this offensive line, where this offensive line was before he was here to where it is now, I do think you are seeing a significant difference and a lot better play and better athletes on this offensive line, especially. I do think you have to give this Jet offensive line credit. They are definitely better athletically, and it looks like they have a future potential all-pro stud in Elijah Vera Tucker, which you have to give the Jets a lot of credit for trading up. Again, guys, if you're new to the channel, we had a mock draft a couple weeks ago, a full 3-round mock draft. You want to check that out. We will be having another one coming out later this week at the 3rd quarter mark for the season, where I have the Jets going in the first 3 rounds. There's probably going to be some surprises in there, so you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button when we do that mock draft. And, of course, if you didn't join us, we had a reaction to Jamal Adams' injury and how the Jets are continuing that trade. That's also available on the channel as well. We did that earlier this week. You guys with a lot of good comments and a lot of good reaction in that one. And again, that trade just for the Jets just keeps looking better and better. I know a lot of Jet fans in the weekend, they check how the Jets do. And then the next reaction is, okay, what did the Panthers and what did the Seahawks do? So again, big trade from Joe Douglas. Doing a great job. Seeing a lot of people join the live stream. Thank you guys for joining us again. Just want to see, do we guys have any more questions or comments in the chat? My favorite part about it is just reacting to you guys and talking to you guys, the fans. You guys make this possible, and I appreciate you being here as always. And, of course, I love the passion of the Jets fan base, and I don't think that you can ever question the passion, especially this past week voting for Zach Wilson to be the rookie of the week. And I do love Zach's reaction where he said, like, personally, I would have voted for Elijah Moore. So again, I do think that Zach Wilson is showing you the traits of a franchise quarterback that you would like to see. And I do think that these next few games will be important. This is going to be a big test for Zach. I mean, especially without a lot of these weapons. And he's going against a very good defense with a good pass rush and a good secondary. And again, if he can just look competent, move the football, not try to do too much, and just manage the game, I'll be happy with that. And I think a lot of Jet fans would be too. But again, the big X factor is going to be Elijah Moore because he's right now this team's best offensive weapon. And if he's not able to go, that really does change dynamic. And I give Joe Douglas a lot of credit because I've been saying this for weeks. And I did remember at the deadline, one of the biggest reactions from Jet fans was like, why didn't this team trade Jamison Crowder? And I remember saying at the time, like, look, I do think that Douglas as a GM learned a valuable lesson from that infamous Colts game a couple years ago where they were starting all the practice squad receivers because they didn't have any wide receiver depth. And I do think that he's going to make an effort going forward that he's going to have incredible depth of the wide receiver position because they need it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets take another wide receiver in the top 3 rounds again this year just to make sure they have great depth. And you look, is this wide receiving group outside the number 1 and 2 great? No, but you can see that they have some playmakers. Braxton Berrios, Jameson Crowder, Keelan Cole will be back. And again, a big factor will be Denzel Mims. Can Mims finally take advantage of his opportunity? Can he take advantage of the opportunity? We don't want the Panthers to lose another game. Draft position in the first round is more important. Yeah, Joe, that is an interesting one because I get it because you want the second round pick to be higher. It's a weird dynamic because in the first round, you want that pick to be as high as possible. Again, if the second round pick is also higher too, don't forget that the higher the second round picks, the better because it does two options for me, especially with this team, is number one, it makes these second round picks more valuable to trade back. Don't forget, Douglas only has 1/3 round pick. So I could see a thing where he sails back, gets another 2, but then gets a 4th and a 5th, or maybe even more picks to get another player or 2. But also, I think it's valuable too, because one of the things about Joe Douglas when we went to last draft was I knew he was comfortable sailing back. I knew he was comfortable getting more picks and stockpiling picks. But my biggest question was, would he be able to recognize talent and would he be aggressive to go up and get certain talent that he recognizes the value of? And last year he proved that with Elijah Vera Tucker, where he traded up from 25 to 14 to basically get Elijah Vera Tucker. And that's encouraging to me because it shows that he's aggressive and that he understands the value of going up and getting a player. So these second round picks, especially if the Panthers is high and the Jets will be high, don't be surprised if the Jets use one of those, especially because they have multiple 4th round picks. I would not be shocked if the Jets basically use a 2 and a 4 to jump back into the first round. Because don't forget, the first round, we see guys fall all the time. And the biggest things that really make an impact on that is if there's a run of positions. I do think you're going to see a run offensive lineman this year. I do think the quarterbacks, I mean, everyone, I saw an article today, will a quarterback go top 10, not go top 10? And I just laughed. I'm like, okay, I guarantee you, like, I know this quarterback class isn't great, but we do this every year. It's like, oh, I don't know how many quarterbacks are going to go. And by the time we get to draft night, it's like, oh my God, how many quarterbacks are going to go in the first round? Is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 8? It's so I do think you're going to see some quarterbacks go. That pushes, of course, everyone down the board. And does one of the great wide receivers fall? I mean, Devonte Smith fell last year to 11 when a lot of people thought he'd be the first receiver off the board. I mean, is there a good pass rusher that slips through the cracks, like a George Karlaftis? Could he potentially fall? Is there a guy that had like a little bit of an injury during a bowl game that falls a little bit? Or is there a guy that the Jets might have a top 15 grade on if he's sitting there at 25, whether it be a pass rusher or a cornerback? Do they decide to pull the trigger and move up? I mean, that's something you have to look at as well. 4th or 5th is better, 39. Yeah, no, Joe, I'm agreeing with you. Like, that's why I'm saying why it's complicated because the first round picks are obviously more valuable. But again, if the Jets win 2 or 3 games the rest of the year, that's going to change that impact. And of course, I think the Seahawks are going to win at least 2 more games. I mean, they play the Texans and I think they play they already played the Jaguars. I think they play another team that's got like two. Oh, it's the Lions. That's who it is. I was like, I know they play like two of the teams in the top three of the draft. So I do think my prediction is Seattle's going to finish with at least 6 wins, maybe 7. I don't see them running the table, especially now with all the injuries on defense with Jamal Adams. So I think that pick's likely going to be like 8 or 9. So again, I also just see the Panthers in a bit of a free fall, Joe. Like I think that's the thing we have to look at with these draft picks is where the teams are now and what's happening. To me, Wilson's healthier. Seattle plays a couple garbage teams. I mean, the Panthers right now are an absolute free fall. I mean, no Darnold, no Cam Newton. I mean, PJ Walker. I'm trying to think like who is the Panthers quarterback this weekend? Is it going to be PJ Walker again? Just because like you look right now, they're in complete free fall. They've now lost Christian McCaffrey for the year, who was their best offensive player. And I mean, it's amazing because I remember this team. We were talking about them after week 3 being 3-0, and they're a mess right now. Because don't forget, too, they just fired their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, who everyone thought was going to be the next hot head coach. And again, this is also a very telling sign to me because we all talk about Matt Rule having that big contract and that long-term contract there in Carolina. But again, I always say an organization's actions speak louder than words. And a coach is starting to get on the hot seat or is on the hot seat when he fires a staff member. I mean, you saw it earlier this year with the Giants with Joe Judge firing Jason Garrett. Now you see Joe Brady get fired in Carolina. And don't forget that owner is incredibly impatient. That's why I said that I see them going full hard after Deshaun Watson this offseason if the case gets figured out or they can figure out that. But again, to me, that Panther pick is obviously the first round pick's more valuable. But in terms of where that's going to be, I think that's going to be higher in the second round than the Seahawks pick in the first round, just because the Panthers are in such a free fall right now. I mean, don't forget too, I mean, they've lost their best player. They don't have a quarterback, and now they just lost their offensive coordinator. And again, Matt Rule, I mean, I know a lot of Jet fans, like the feeling was after the first week, like a lament that they didn't get Matt Rule as a head coach. But now it seems like Matt Rule, not looking too great right now. But the nice thing about Rule is, if he wanted to go back to college, he could probably get one of the top 5 or 6 jobs in college football without question. And it is funny because I just saw a thing about Chip Kelly now potentially going to Oregon. So, I mean, maybe the UCLA job opens up. I mean, Oklahoma down the road. So, I mean, Matt Rule's got plenty of options going forward. But again, I'm just being realistic. I feel like the Seahawks pick is probably going to be 8 or 9. I doubt it gets outside the top 10. I think the highest it gets is to 10. But still, I mean, if you were to tell me that the Jets would get a top 10 pick from the Seahawks this year, I would have told you were nuts. And I mean, now it looks like that's going to happen. So, but again, for the Panthers, like I said, the higher that second round pick gets, again, it increases the value of it allows the Jets to be aggressive because think about it, like if the Jets are sitting there with 2 great second round picks, they can be aggressive and trade one to get back into the first round. And then if they feel they need to recoup some assets, they can trade the other one to move back a couple picks and get some more later draft picks. But again, too, if they feel comfortable, they can trade up and then stay at number 2. And you're probably going to get, hopefully, what the Jets are hoping is a guy that's top 20 on their board falls to the second round, like Elijah Moore did, who was top 16 on their board. So again, you see a lot of guys, especially at the top end of the second round, that's incredibly valuable for teams because you get a lot of first round guys that slip out because of quarterbacks going, offensive linemen going, certain run on positions where you see teams panic. Like if a great receiver goes off the board, then the teams that want a receiver all of a sudden try to panic and trade up. I mean, I call it the fantasy effect. I mean, it's like in fantasy drafts when you see, like, I always call it the run on. Like when you see someone finally take a defense or a kicker, you see teams panic, and then you see like 4 or 5 picks going like, oh, I need that position. I can't let it pass. So great question, Joe. Any other questions in the chat? See, we have some questions, Joe. I wonder if Justin Jets is in the chat. Always someone that I love to talk to. Always has some great comments and questions as well. I wonder if he's in here today. Any other questions, guys, before we get going? Any questions about the matchup this weekend, draft, current state of the roster, Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims? I know you guys have a lot of opinions and questions, and I would love to hear them. So just sitting back, waiting to see if you guys have any other questions. have any comments about the state of this team. Would love to hear from you guys. And again, I mean, what are your thoughts on Mekhi Becton? I've seen some of that you guys want him gone. I see in the chat that he is a concern according to your votes. I probably should have kept that up a little longer. I apologize. But again, like we can talk the draft, we can talk upcoming transactions. So if you guys have questions, make sure you put that in the chat box over there. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button here so you don't miss any of our Jets content, including our reactions after every home game and not every home game, every game. Sorry about that. We react to every Jets game. And of course, with unique content like mock drafts, especially as we get into the offseason, we will have one next week. I know you guys love those. And I'm looking forward to do that. I already have it made. I just have to basically put the finishing touches on the video. So I have those first 5 picks for the Jets. Some surprises, I think, in there for you guys as well. And it is interesting. I think I see a lot of people saying the Jets have to use bold picks defensively in the first round. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, and I'll preface the mock draft by putting this in that video saying that the Jets, to me, are going to be hyper aggressive in free agency, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So because of that, I think that certain defensive positions that many of these mock drafts other people have are not going to happen again. I don't see the Jets drafting a cornerback in the top 10. The kid from LSU is talented, but I'm concerned with the injuries that he's had. And again, the Jets need a true number one, and it's really difficult to ask a rookie cornerback to be the number one corner their first year. And also Kyle Hamilton. But again, I keep saying this, and I love all these mock drafts that have Kyle Hamilton the Jets, Kyle Hamilton the Jets, and I'm like, I get it, but when you're talking about a mock draft, it's more than just putting the best player and the best need. It's really looking at an organization, the structure, and the tendencies of an organization. And the Jets have told us, especially Joe Douglas, that look, he likes safeties, but he doesn't highly value safeties because he's had 2 safeties in his building that he hasn't paid a premium contract for. He has Marcus May, who likely won't be on the team next year. And again, we're talking about that. And I just don't see the Jets all of a sudden investing a top 10 pick in a safety. I mean, the Jets traded, like, it doesn't make sense. The Jets traded a safety to get 2 first-round picks, and one of those first-round picks could be potentially used on a safety. I mean, that to me just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, if anything, I think it's going to go best pass rusher available than best offensive lineman available. I do think that. And while I love Linderbaum, as you've heard from this episode, I do think the Jets are going to now look at a tackle up high just because of the insurance policy for Becton. Draft a player forward, trade down with pick 5. Again, I don't see the Jets having the 5th pick. I think it's going to be closer to 7 or 8th with Seattle. Pick a player 10 to 12 back in the first round. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that because, again, if the Jets have a high pick, there's going to be a guy that falls. And again, there's some really good, talented receivers. I don't think this is as good a receiver draft as last year. But again, if the Jets are sitting there at 6 and a team is desperate for a receiver like the Eagles were for Devonte Smith, and a lot of it depends on who's picking behind the Jets. If it's a team that really wants that is probably targeting a receiver and a team sees that, they could trade up. And again, I do think that's one of the fun things about the Jets draft this year is they have so much flexibility to move up and down because of their stockpile picks in both the first and second round. And I'm glad you brought that up, Joe, because we were talking about the second round, but the first round too. I mean, Jets could use those picks to sail back. Like, for example, if they really love Linderbaum and are hell-bent on drafting Linderbaum, but their mocks and their research shows that he's likely going to probably be there at 10 or 11, and they feel they can go back for a guy like that, or, for example, like a George Karlaftis, if he's a guy that they value if they take a lineman early and they feel he's going to fall and they can get him later in the draft but get a couple picks out of it again, I just could see them doing that again. What if you trade back, get a couple more picks, then you can use those to jump back into the first round. I mean, the Jets can move all around this draft, which is what's fascinating. I mean, and that's one thing I give Joe Douglas a lot of credit for in the first 2 years is he's shown like the ability to get good value moving back, but also he's got the wherewithal to move front. Because a lot of GMs, it's easy to move back because it's easier to sell to the fan base. And it's easier to sell like, hey, and it's almost like a little bit, it takes off the pressure because it's like, okay, well, we traded back for picks later in the draft, then they're not as high end. So if they don't pan out as quickly as this guy in the first round, it makes a little bit more sense. And so I do think that that also helps too. In a lot of GMs, it's like it's easier just to say, okay, we'll trade back and get more picks. That just makes life easier instead of just saying, I'm not sure about this guy right here. So again, like I do think the Jets could do that. I mean, could they go out and draft the receiver later if they trade down? That's a possibility if they trade down. Could they maybe then take a corner? Do they feel more comfortable taking a cornerback, not top 10, but maybe top 20? That could be something. I mean, could they feel confident? Like, I know they don't. I've been saying don't draft Kyle Hamilton, but again, if they know that a team's not going to take a safety in the top 10 and they feel that he can be an impact player and they move down, like, let's say 11 or 12 and get extra picks out of it, and then they can sell, like, okay, it's a safety, but we've also turned that first round pick into a safety and multiple other positions. Maybe that makes sense for Kyle Hamlin. I just don't see him taking him like 6th or 7th. But again, if they feel he's going to fall to like 12 or 13, and then you could be like, okay, we got like a top 5 talent in the teens while also getting more picks. I mean, that also could make sense as well. So again, a lot of it is about player movement. A lot of it is about also seeing where the draft falls. Because again, I think the Jets also, even with their first round pick, could get a boatload depending on who's picking. I mean, I know everyone keeps saying, "Oh, the quarterbacks, the quarterbacks, the quarterbacks," but if you don't have a quarterback, you can get desperate. And I still believe. I know Russell Wilson. It came out like the teams he wants to be potentially traded to. I think the only team that might have a shot is the Broncos. But again, I think that the Seahawks will do anything to keep him happy. They'll change the coaching staff. They'll do whatever to keep Russell there. I don't think Rodgers is likely moving. I mean, I think the biggest quarterback to move is probably going to be Jimmy Garoppolo this offseason. But again, I just look at this situation and going, could a team like the Giants, who now Daniel Jones is not only out for potentially the year, but they're saying he might have a career-threatening injury. Could the new staff there look at the Jets and go, okay, we know no quarterback is really going to be taken except maybe Houston, but they really like the second guy like a Malik Willis or something, and the team behind the Jets is taking a quarterback. Could a team like the Giants get desperate and trade a boatload up? Like if a quarterback is there with the Jets' first pick and a team gives them a stupid offer where it's not only just a moving back a couple spots, but it's getting an additional first round picks the following year. I mean, that could be hard to turn down too. Could you imagine the Jets for 3 consecutive years had 2 first round picks? And again, that would be exciting for Joe Douglas because he loves draft pick. He loves having that capital. So that's another thing to keep an eye on too, is because again, I always say this about the draft is like, I don't love the quarterbacks in this draft, but this is a desperation need. And you can't tell me the Houston Texans aren't not going to draft the quarterback. Like that's the thing that drives me nuts. I see all these mock drafts. Oh, they're going to take Thibodeau. Really? They don't have a quarterback. And they're like, well, they'll get draft picks for Deshaun Watson and they'll use a layer pick. That's not how it works. In the NFL, like if you have a guy that you like at quarterback and you feel he's the best fit, you take him first. Because you can fill out the roster with other players later. You can move up and get other players later. But like if you're waiting for a quarterback, you're going to get burned because the team's going to move up and get one. I do think Pickett at the end of the process is probably going to be the top quarterback. I still like Malik Willis a lot from Liberty. I think he's a dynamic playmaker. Again, he's got to go to a team that really fits his skill set and that utilizes his skill set a lot. But again, like I was going through this the other day. I mean, there's teams like Deshaun Watson's going to be the big X factor about where he. But again, are there teams that are going to be in the market for a young quarterback? I mean, I do think the Broncos are going to be all in to try to get one of the veterans. But if they don't get a veteran, they don't have a quarterback. You can't tell me that they're not going to be aggressive. I mean, they've accumulated a bunch of picks. They now have the additional second and third round picks from the Von Miller trade to maybe get a quarterback. I mean, just going, the AFC's got the most quarterbacks in terms of young quarterbacks, but even still, I mean, the Texans need a quarterback. I'm just going through every division. I mean, I know the Dolphins aren't sold, but they're not going to draft a quarterback. I mean, the Browns are an interesting case. What do they do with Baker Mayfield? I think they're going to be pressured into keeping him, but I mean, Baker hasn't been good this year either. So there's a lot of questions there. The Steelers now, I mean, Big Ben's now saying he's going to retire. I mean, they're going to probably be in the market for a quarterback. I mean, I know they're going to, once again, a lot of these teams are going to go for the veterans, but I don't really see a lot of them moving outside of Deshaun Watson. Even that's still an issue with the legal issues. So, did you see? Do you mean Tomlin? Yeah, he said no stone left unturned fixing this. Not only how he played on the field, but who's out there. Yeah, like and the Steelers got absolutely like I don't know how the Steelers came back in that game last night, but again, like they need a quarterback. I mean, in the NFC is a division that needs a lot. Like if Seattle somehow moves on from Wilson, they're going to need a quarterback. I mean, the NFC East right now. I mean, I don't think the Eagles they like their quarterbacks. They don't love their quarterbacks. I doubt they do. I doubt they make a big move unless it's Deshaun Watson. But again, the Giants likely need a quarterback. I know Washington, Taylor Heineke's played well for them. But again, I think he's at his ceiling right now. And they can be a decent team. They can win 6 or 7, 8 games in that division. But can they compete with Dallas to win that division? And I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot. Jets never hold anyone accountable. People just cashing checks here. Justin Jets, I'm not exactly sure what you mean uh by that statement. If you could elaborate slightly. But I mean, I do think the Jets culture is changing as we're talking about the culture a lot in this episode. But again, we talked a lot about Mekhi Becton, his injury status earlier in this episode. But we've talked a lot about the draft again, which I love. I'm a huge draft nerd, so the more draft, the better. And once again, I do think that the quarterbacks needs going to help the Jets because it makes the Jets high-end picks more valuable because a team that needs a quarterback, I mean, there's going to be at least 3 or 4 teams that desperately need a quarterback by the time the draft hits. And if they feel a team behind the Jets is going to take a quarterback, they might give them a offer that Joe Douglas can't refuse. We never threaten to bench people for crap. They just keep playing like garbage and never feel like their job is in danger. I don't know about that. I mean, the thing too, Justin, is a lot of the guys. Well, here's the thing with GVR. I mean, the problem was they didn't have an alternative, and I do think that they traded for. I give the Jets credit. They went out and got Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, and basically when he was ready to play and back in playbook, because don't forget the guy hadn't played almost in a year and a half. And when I think they felt he was good enough in shape and ready to go, I mean, he was out there and playing well. And it'll be interesting to see if he plays this week. But again, the problem with the Jets is, I mean, who's going to replace them? I mean, this is a young roster with a lot of young players. I mean, there's not like guys who are like, okay, they're on the bench and not playing, but they should be playing. I mean, the one guy I guess you could say is Becton. But again, Becton's a mystery. I mean, you feel like he should be back by now. I mean, the Jets are saying he's not ready to go yet. I mean, he hasn't even had a padded practice yet. I mean, that to me is culture isn't changing. It has changed. Yeah, I agree that it has definitely changed. I mean, I said changing because it's still a process. I mean, this is still the first year. I mean, they're still figuring stuff out. So when I say changing, I don't mean that as a negative term. I mean that as basically like it things can change, but you also want things to be continuously evolving. You don't want them to stop. Again, I think that like outside of GVR, Justin, is there someone you want them to bench that should be getting playing time over someone? Because like really, like the way the Jets roster is right now, they've been decimated with injuries. I can't think of a player that's really on the bench right now. I mean, this is not the days where you had Sheldon Richardson being benched because of off the field issues, or Darren Lee getting benched for off the field issues, or Leonard Williams, or I mean, Muhammad Wilkerson. I remember like that supposedly vaunted defensive line. I mean, all you heard was stories about the guys not performing and guys, um, Ashton Davis. I mean, Ashton Davis has played better, but again, who the heck is going to play over Ashton Davis? I mean, the other starting safeties from the Eagles practice squad. Okay, well, who's replacing Ashton Davis? What safeties do they have on the roster? I mean, their 2 starting safeties are injured and out for the year. I mean, and I'll say this, Davis has been playing better. Has he been great? No, but I have seen him get better. I've watched the tape. He's getting better in coverage. He does seem like he's getting to learn. And once again, Davis was behind the 8 ball because this is a kid who really only started playing college football full time when he was in college. So I think he's got the physical skills. He needs the mental makeup. And if he can figure that out, great. And I mean, I get Ashton Davis, but again, who are you replacing him with? Who are you replacing him with? I mean, seriously, like if the Steelers at least they have bodies and they have good depth. I mean, this is the thing I've been saying all week. Like bad teams and young teams with not great rosters, they get exposed by injuries, and the Jets have been hit as hard as any team in the league with injuries. I mean, just think about all the injuries that they've had. All this, like if I would say the starting 11 for both sides of the football, both units are missing about 5 stars. The Jets defense, I mean, Lawson's not out there. Rankins, you hope is back this week. It looks like he'll be ready to go, but he missed last week. But you're missing Carl Lawson and Bryce Huff, or your two edge rushers. I mean, we're not even talking about the depth of like Vinny Curry either. I mean, they're outside linebackers. All their stars except CJ Mosley have been out. Their back end, their two starting safeties are out. So, I mean, Neesman, I have to check. Like, I don't know if he was cut because the problem with the Jets too is they keep moving. And Justin, with more, I'm going off of yesterday's update. He did not practice. Today's going to be a big day. If he goes a little bit, I do think he'll play. But I've also said this, Justin. If there's a chance he could aggravate it or make it worse, and he has to miss more time the rest of the year, to me, just bite the bullet, have him miss this game, and come back. And I know that hurts Zach Wilson for this week. But again, I'd rather have Elijah Moore for the remainder of the season be healthy and be out there to help Zach Wilson, especially with the Corey Davis injury, than having him go out there, aggravate the quad, and then miss more time. So again, I do think that will be something to keep an eye on. And again, more like the injuries like this year, like I don't think they're that significant. I think a lot of it's just the Jets being cautious, and I get it, especially in this type of season where things aren't going great. So again, I just feel like the Jets, like I saw someone saying that, like, should I be worried about Elijah Moore's injuries? And look, I don't think it is. They're not significant. They're not knee injuries. They're not hamstring injuries. I mean, they're quad injuries, and I just think it goes back to the training camp injury. I think it's not going to be fully healthy until next year, and it's just kind of a lingering situation. But again, today's a big day for that. We'll have to check the injury report. If he practices today, I think you'll see him on Sunday. If he doesn't, I don't think you'll see him. And again, I just feel like the Jets, they know he's a young superstar, and they know they have a good young piece in him, and they know what they have, and they know how vital he is to the success of this team, especially Zach Wilson's development. And again, do you want to take the short term? Like, could he help this team win a game this week? Yeah. But then if you're going to lose him for 2 or 3 weeks because of that, I would err on the side of caution. I think that's what they're going to do. I mean, and Justin, I don't think is going to be happy to hear this either. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif also did not practice week, so it looks like we will get the return of GVR. Yay! So, well, more so, and yeah, Justin, I guess you joined us a little bit late. We were talking about this extensively with Mims earlier. I said that this is a big opportunity for Mims, and I said this about the NFL. The NFL is a unique league because you're not only trying to show off yourself for your team, you're showing to show off for the other organizations. And look, this is going to be critical for Mims, not only to prove that he belongs with the Jets, but if the Jets don't feel he fits this scheme, but he plays well these next couple games, maybe team can give the Jets a third-round pick for him. I mean, I don't think the Jets are going to just give him away just to give him away, but if a team gives him a fair offer, I think it might be hard to turn down. And again, this is up to Mims. I mean, last week, his biggest impact was a 15-yard penalty. I didn't agree with the penalty, but again, I mean, if I was to describe Denzel Mims this season, I feel most Jet fans would say the penalty or they would say the drops. And that's not good. I mean, when your highlight of the season was a preseason game, I mean, that's not good. And look, this is a golden opportunity for him because he will be out there more. But again, this is an opportunity for guys like Braxton Berrios to continue to grow. This is an opportunity for Jameson Crowder. And I think this is a great opportunity for Keelan Cole because to me, Cole is a very underrated receiver. But if Cole goes out there and is dominant and has a great game, I do think that that helps him in terms of getting a bigger contract from the Jets. Uh, the thing is, we really need a Mims. If we don't sign Cole, lose Crowder, you do need Mims. I mean, Justin, I also have been saying this too. I would not be shocked if the Jets draft a receiver. I mean, I don't think there's a true X, which is the big buy receiver on the outside in this draft, except for maybe Williams from Alabama. But I don't think the Jets would draft him that high. One kid I really would love to see the Jets draft, either trade up for him late in the first round or get him later, is Chris Olave, the receiver from Ohio State. I mean, he set the record for most touchdowns in Ohio State history. So, but I love watching his tape because he reminds me a lot of Moore-ish, where I look at a guy that attacks the football when he has the football in his hands, can make big plays. But really, the reason I really love Olave, and one reason I was really excited about Moore, was you can tell that they're great route runners. They run great routes. They have a big route tree. And even some of these big name receivers that we're talking about on the top of the draft, even the top 2 or 3. I mean, one of my biggest criticisms is like, look, they're great athletes. There's no question. They're game changers. But I look at their route running and like they run a limited tree. And look, that works. You need the receiver in the spot because this offense is predicated on getting open because of the route running. And to me, Olave would be a nice fit. So I think Crowder's gone, but I do see Cole coming back. I know the Jets were thrilled to have him, but again, this is an opportunity for Mims, and Mims needs to take advantage of it. And like I said, it's not just for the Jets, it's for his NFL future because it might not work out for the Jets for him. And if it doesn't work out for him, you know what? It stings, but it is what it is. And if he can go out there and play well and Jets feel confident in him next year, that's great. But if he goes out and plays well and the Jets don't feel he's the right fit and they can get something for him, that's also great. The biggest thing you don't want is him to go out there and struggle and look terrible because then you feel like you're stuck with him and you're not going to get value for him in a trade. So Jets haven't had the same starting receivers for 2 consecutive. That ruins young QBs. Like, look, they're going to have Elijah Moore and Corey Davis next year. I think that they're just looking to add a third receiver or another top 2 receiver and move more to the slot. So again, Joe, I do think that they're trying to keep things steady, but they're going to look to add a tight end. I do think they're going to look to add another receiver. I mean, if they could somehow get Devonte Adams or Allen Robinson, I think they're going to go hard after those guys. It depends on where those guys are thinking and what they want to do, but I mean, also don't throw out drafting wide receiver. I mean, again, you look at teams that are successful in the NFL with young quarterbacks, they have playmakers. It doesn't matter how many playmakers, they just have a bunch of playmakers. Kansas City has a bunch of playmakers. I mean, Dallas has a bunch of playmakers. I mean, it's really like, do you have enough playmakers for your quarterback? And look, Corey Davis is a good receiver, but Elijah Moore is a big playmaker. And if the Jets can find a playmaking receiver in the draft, I mean, that would be incredible. And look at Devonte Adams. Like I said, it depends. If he wants to play with Rodgers, that's one thing. If he wants to win a championship, he's not coming to the Jets. But if he just cares about who's going to give him the biggest check, I do think the Jets can give him the biggest check. So I also would like Allen Robinson. I do think that's a guy that we kind of forget about, but is a guy that I do think the Jets would be smart to go after and would be a nice fit as well. So, but again, guys, any other questions in the chat? Yeah, that would be something with the Devonte Adams. But again, guys, this should be a good game this weekend. Would love to see the Jets somehow stop the run on defense. I'd put all 11 guys in the box if I could, but we'll see how they attack it. We'll see how Zach Wilson does, and of course, the big question is if Elijah Moore plays this weekend. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Monday at 10 a.m. to recap the Jets-Saints game. Love having you guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the channel for mock drafts coming out, more Jets content. And once again, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button too, because we want to get this out to as many Jet fans as possible. Thank you guys, as always, for joining us. Looking forward to next time. I will see you on Monday after the Jets take on the Saints this weekend. I'll see you next time.